The witching season has passed, but the paranormal activity continues. This world is a strange one. Another thanks goes out to Diana Andrea for another awesome thumbnail. Don't miss her link in the description. This world of ours is full of terror. Another world or realm encompasses our own. It is a world both after and without death, where the angry, tormented, and evil try to reach out to us for the very worst reasons. So, tonight I will share with you 8 true stories of paranormal activity that give insight into the horrific world that we cannot always see. But before I start, I will let you know that I am still looking for creepy hospital stories or sea monster sightings. Be sure to send your story today at darknessprevails.org/submit. Now, bring on the nightmares. Number 1. Paranormal Activity. Submitted by Shadow Sonya Blade. I grew up on my family's ranch in the desert. I was just a kid, so no one really took me seriously, of course. And while living there, I experienced many strange things on that ranch. But there is one story that still haunts me to this day. I was asleep when I woke up to footsteps in my room. I opened my eyes slowly to see a large shadowy man hovering over my bed. Terrified, I attempted to scream, but nothing would come out. This shadow man reached out to me and pinned me down. Unable to scream or move, I started to cry. Again, no noise came out, just tears running down my cheeks. I lay there terrified, not knowing what would happen to me next. Hours go by and I'm still pinned down, unable to scream with this shadow in front of me. After a while, the shadow man finally left my room. It was then that I was finally able to move and scream, so I did. My parents came rushing in and I told them what had happened. They looked up at each other worriedly and told me it was just a dream. I insisted that it wasn't and that I was too scared to sleep alone, so my parents took me to their room for the night. I would later discover that what I had experienced was called sleep paralysis. This happened to me every night of my entire life, but that's not the end of it. I started to think maybe I was crazy. That was until I was 14 years old and my cousin came over for a sleepover. We stayed up late, talking and watching TV. We finally fell asleep, and of course, it happened again. I tried desperately to reach out to her with no success, and this shadow man was there and had whispered in my ear, "Hello, beautiful." I was beyond horrified. The next morning, I told her what had happened. Her eyes widened as I explained all of it. That's when she turned to me and said, "Oh my God, I thought I was the only one." I've experienced the same thing multiple times for years. The whole thing really freaked us out, but we kept talking. That's when something scared us even more. I had a mason jar of orange juice on top of my dresser on the other side of my room. And while we were talking about our experiences, the jar flew up and across the room and landed perfectly in the middle of the room. We were terrified to say the least, but we tried to just shrug it off as our minds playing tricks on us. Years went by and we would still see things move on their own, and my sleep paralysis was just getting worse. Later on, I made friends with a strange girl who claimed to be psychic. She said that there was a man that followed me around everywhere. She said he appeared to her as a large shadowy figure. She identified him as a demonic entity that was using me. She said he probably wanted to possess my body and use it as his vessel. It creeped me out. I attempted to change the subject and she said that there was someone else. There was a young Mexican man who seemed to have known me. She even asked him who he was, to which he replied, "My name is Anthony. I am her cousin." I started to cry because my cousin was named Anthony, and he had recently passed in a car accident. I had lost touch with him for a while, and I never got to say goodbye. She said he was trying to help me, but he was unable to. She helped me try to get in touch with him, and shortly after she told me not to worry, because he was now protecting me from the shadow man. I now carry a picture of him everywhere I go and have not had any more experiences like those. But my son apparently has been seeing the same man I used to. I don't know what to do, but I hope my son won't have to go through what I have. Number 2. Ghost Lady in My Window. Submitted by Nichole. This ghost story starts in a typical house in a typical small New England city upon moving in. My husband and I, just starting out as newlyweds, found a nice 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood that we could rent and turn into a nice place. Shortly after we were settled, everything changed and the first occurrence happened. I suffer from insomnia, and on this cold March night, I stayed downstairs to watch TV while my husband decided to go to bed. Suddenly, the house got very quiet, and it was unsettling. My husband, a very burly and tough man, flew down the stairs and asked if I had been upstairs at all. After I explained to him that I had not, he tried to calm down, and he told me that as he was laying in bed trying to drift off to sleep, the blankets moved off of his feet and a cold hand started to caress his foot. The activity finally escalated enough that we decided to move our bedroom downstairs to the much smaller room off the dining room. This seemed to make the spirit in our house move throughout the whole house. Soon bowls that were placed on the kitchen counter would spin in a clockwise or counterclockwise motion. They would slide across the counter, knives would fly across the kitchen, computers that we have in our dining room would shut themselves off or turn on, and a black mass so dense it blocks out any light from the room behind it. To this date, the occurrences continue. We often hear something walking down the stairs. Our dogs stare into the corners barking. They would be growling at something that we cannot see, and several visitors to the house have seen the ghostly apparition of an elderly lady staring down from the upstairs window when they come to visit. We believe that the ghostly lady is the woman that spent the latter years of her life in this house, before finally passing yet not wanting to leave the house that holds her memories. So before you move into a house, be careful and sure that there is not something waiting on you upon moving in. Number 3. What waits at the bottom of the stairs? Submitted by Alessandra K. When I was younger in the 90s, I lived in the outskirts of Watsonville, California, in a huge 2-story farm-style house. It was big enough to hold my grandparents who owned the house and their grown children plus their families. Needless to say, I loved living there since I was young, and I lived there with all my cousins, aunts, uncles, and grandparents. It was a beautiful place, and we had lots of animals, and my grandfather would garden and plant corn and other goods. However, at night, the house would take an altogether sinister vibe. In this house, as a child, I had many horrible paranormal experiences, but none affected me as much as the one I'm about to share with you. I was about 7 years old, and I woke up in the middle of the night, really needing to use the bathroom. I woke up my parents, whose room I slept in, and told them I had to go, and they both were too tired to take me and said if I wanted to go so bad, I'd have to go by myself. I was terrified. I hated the hallway at night because of how dark it would get, and because it always felt like something was hiding in the shadows, just watching me. I was hesitant as I opened the door. I peered down the hallway, unable to see anything in front of me. I held my arm out and proceeded to walk my way down the hall, feeling the wall as I went and using it as my guide. My heart raced as I felt I was being watched. It felt like I had been walking an eternity in the dark, even though it couldn't have been more than 20 seconds, because of the glacial pace I moved at. But once I got to the end of the hall, I turned to my right and saw the door to the bathroom. The door to the bathroom was right next to the stairs that led to the first floor, and the stairs, along with the bathroom door, were lit up because of a window that set up high on the bottom of the stairs. This night, however, the moon was out, and the light of the moon showered the stairs with light and illuminated the door. As I sighed with relief, I walked up to the door and reached out to open it. I froze, however, as I reached out for the doorknob and had an immediate feeling of impending doom, like I was being looked at. I remember feeling a need to look downstairs, so I turned my head slowly, in mid-pose to open the door, only to see what I could only describe as the figure of what looked like a man at the bottom of the stairs, except this man had no features whatsoever. He was just a solid black mass in the outline of a man, except this figure did not have legs. It was just the torso and 2 small stumps of what could have been legs. I looked at this thing in horror as it looked back at me. My heart sank as I felt like I was unable to move due to fear. Then this thing began crawling up the stairs by reaching out and grabbing the handrail to pull itself up. I remember just being locked on staring at this thing, clearly trying to get to me, and still being confused as to why I could not make out any features. I would see everything else perfectly fine, being the moonlight was strong enough to illuminate the stairs to the point of being able to see pretty clearly. I could see everything in the light's path, but not this black humanish mass. This thing made it to about 3 steps before reaching me, before I broke out of my frozen state of fear and I dashed back to my room where my parents were. I ran in and I closed the door. I locked it behind me and I crawled into bed with the covers over my head. Needless to say, I did pee the bed that night because of the fear of what I had just seen, and in the morning my parents asked why I peed the bed, angry, rather than go to the bathroom like they said to do. I told them what happened, and they looked at me and said, "You must have imagined it. You did not see anything." But I knew better. I didn't speak of that incident for years, until I was in my late teens, about 18 or 19, and I brought the incident up again to my grandparents in their new house. They looked at me and were surprised I could still remember things from the old house. But they told me they too had experiences at that house along with my aunts and uncles, but that no one talked about it for fear of scaring the children. To this day, whenever I visit Watsonville to see my family, and I happen to pass the old house that still stands tall, these horrific memories come flooding back. Those memories of terrors as a child. Maybe one day I'll be brave enough to go up and see the house up close again, but then again, maybe not. Number 4. Someone's in my bed. Submitted by Crimson Raven. In this paranormal experience, I was not home alone, but the only one to experience it myself. My family believes in spirits, but they believe that no one can see, hear, or talk to them. When I saw my first spirit as a child, my parents refused to believe me, and I never told anyone the experiences I had as I grew up, or even as an adult. My parents, my older brother, and my sister-in-law were all in the house at the time. I usually sleep with my door closed unless I'm home alone, so I did my usual nightly routine, turned off the lights and closed my door before I crawled into bed. I don't know what time I fell asleep, but I woke up at 4 in the morning, when most of my paranormal encounters happen. I lay in bed and on my right side, when all of a sudden I felt someone lift the covers and crawl into the bed with me. I felt a man's arm drape over my waist and the feeling of someone curling up next to me in the bed. I was absolutely frozen with fear, and I was confused on what was going on because no one in my family would do this. Not to mention no one opened or closed my door. I would have heard its horrendous squealing of 30-plus-year-old hinges. I squeezed my eyes shut, breathing so hard and fast I was nearly hyperventilating. Then I felt this hand that had been draped over my waist, now moving up to my shoulder and trying to either pull me to the other side of the bed or roll me over. But I resisted. I was afraid of what would have happened if I complied with whatever this thing in my bed with me wanted. Eventually, the tugging on my shoulder stopped. I finally had the courage to partially turn over and look at my other side of the bed a few seconds later. There was no one there. Number 5. Running at 2 a.m. Submitted by Court D. I was 13 when this happened, and it still scares me to this day. For some background, my family and I had moved into my nanny's home after she died, and no one has owned the property except her. My sister and her friend, we'll call her Amy, were sleeping downstairs. My mother was sleeping in a room next to me, and my father was down in the basement sleeping. I was in my bedroom drawing on my computer, and it was about 2 in the morning. I usually stay up late, because I could never sleep no matter how hard I tried. So I continued to draw, listening to music through my headphones. As the song was changing to a new one, I hear someone walking downstairs. I removed my headphones and I listened, waiting to hear more footsteps, but there was nothing. I pushed it aside and pulled my headphones back on. I often hear random sounds that were never there, like a phone vibrating or cracking noises, so I didn't care much. A few minutes passed, I was changing the song, and I stopped when I heard running on the kitchen floor downstairs. I actually flinched from the sound. I slowly get out of my chair and I set my headphones down. I grab my phone and turn on the flashlight. I slowly walk downstairs, the old steps creaking underneath my feet. I shine my phone light on my sister and Amy, who were fast asleep. I check in the kitchen where the running came from, and of course no one was there. I shake it off as my mind playing tricks on me. So I head back up to my room and I sit down on my bed. As I was about to turn off the phone light, I heard running once more, and I look again and found nothing. This happened about another 2 times before I just gave up. I'm not going to lie, I was scared to death. Then, out of the blue, I heard laughter. It sounded like a young child. My body began shaking with fear, and I sat down on the hallway floor, right below a mirror, my body still shaking and my eyes darting around the hallway. I woke up in my bed, and it was daytime. I asked my mother if I was in my room all night. She said that she found me asleep on the floor when she got up at 4 to go to the bathroom. Since then, I continued to hear random voices as if someone was whispering right in my ear, but I can never remember what they say. One being is a woman's voice, another an old man's, and the third a little boy's. Each one I hear is always new. No one believes me because no one can hear it, but I know they're there. I can feel it. Number 6. Winter of Horror. Submitted by Juan. During my winter break from school last year, I encountered my first ghost experience. I remember this as if it happened yesterday. One day around midnight, I was on a video call with my girlfriend on Snapchat when out of the corner of my eye I could see a figure standing at the opening of my door. I turned my head at the direction of where my door was, and I could see a figure standing right there. Keep in mind it was around midnight, maybe 12:35. I was able to see my figure through the bathroom window because the light from the light pole was illuminating a light blue light through the bathroom window. Now, this isn't the first time I've seen this figure. I have seen it multiple times. Now, this figure doesn't seem aggressive. I've never had anything happen to me or anyone else in my family. On another occasion, when I would see this figure, I was in the restroom, and on my way back to my room, I could see the figure pacing back and forth outside. Keep in mind, my room is next to the living room and the front door. As I see this figure pacing back and forth, I just figured that someone was playing a joke on me. So I went to the front door and flicked the light switch up. And to my amazement, no one was there. I could only see the figure when the light was off. Number 7. Terror in Brazil. Submitted by Mac8458. A little backstory first. I am a Mormon, and around the age of 19 to 21, most guys will serve a full-time 2-year mission for our church. That being said, I believe strongly that there is another world that is right next to ours, and that if we look for things, we are bound to find them. This happened to my wife's cousin, who 5 years ago was serving a mission for our church. He had been in Sao Paulo, Brazil, for about 6 months. About every 2 months or so, he would be moved to a new area. After transferring to one of these, he and his missionary companion were doing what we call tracking, or going door to door, when they saw this creepy abandoned house in the corner of the street. After passing it multiple times, he asked his companion what was wrong with that house. His companion replied that he wasn't sure, but was told that a lot of voodoo had been performed there, and that he had always wanted to go and bless that house and remove the evil feeling that always accompanied it. My wife's cousin replied that might be neat to see, and said maybe we could do that on their P-Day, a half-day off to prepare for the coming week. Now, both missionaries have been fairly new and excited to use their priesthood to do something amazing. P-Day came and they went back. My wife's cousin started feeling uneasy about going inside. He said he was having second thoughts. His companion called him a scaredy cat and said that he could wait outside. His companion went back inside and performed the blessing and came back out as if nothing had happened. My wife's cousin still had a bad feeling, but he did his best to dismiss it. They ran back to their apartment so they could shower and get ready to go out for more tracking. When they got back, my wife's cousin felt he should call the mission after his companion went to take the first shower. As he told the mission president what had happened, his mission president began shouting at him, "Don't leave him alone, and don't either one of you take off your garments. I'll be right over." You might know them as Mormon underwear, which are sacred to us and offer protection like the Catholic cross. His companion had been very quiet for too long, so my wife's cousin went to check on him. Now, my wife says that when her cousin told her this, he just about vomited from memory. When he entered the bathroom, there was his missionary companion, hanging from the shower rod with his eyes missing and his belt as a noose. My wife's cousin stayed away from that house the rest of the time he was in that area. And number 8, Mystery Flight Officer. Submitted by Yuki236. I work in an airport as a maintenance technician, as such late night shifts are usually part of the job. We usually use the maintenance levels, parts the public won't see or have access to, which link the 3 terminals together. It was on one of these late nights that I happened to come across a pilot, a 3rd or 2nd officer by the looks of her rank, hanging around the lift leading to the maintenance level. It's kind of odd, since flight crews don't have access to that level, not to mention it was 1 in the morning. Naturally, I asked if I could be of assistance. She mentioned she needed to get to the next terminal to reach the flight office of her airline, and since the monorail was closed for the night, She was wondering if I knew any shortcuts to reach the first terminal without having to take the shuttle bus that came every hour. So naturally I told her she could use the maintenance level, but I warned that it could be a 20 to 30 minute walk. Nonetheless, she agreed. Thinking back, I probably broke a lot of rules or could have been fired, but I swiped my card and we entered the lift that led to the maintenance floor. While walking through the maintenance level, we talked for a bit. She mentioned where her next flight was to, and we exchanged small talk. As we neared the end of the corridor and were nearing the entrance of the next terminal, I swiped my card to open the door, but she was nowhere to be seen. She simply vanished. We were the only ones in the tunnels that night, and no one else was around. I backtracked for a bit, but I could not find her. Naturally, I alerted the security, but they could not find her either. Funny thing is, the security footage showed that I was alone the whole time. No one else was walking with me through that section that night. I apologize if this story isn't as exciting, but it was a very weird and chilling experience for me. To be honest, I'm not sure what it was that I saw that night, but I can't help but think that it was a spirit that is trapped there. Now, most of you hear these scary paranormal stories and think, wow, I'm glad I didn't have to go through something like that. But I know there are some of you out there like myself who want to experience something creepy. While I can't blame anyone for feeling that way, I don't think it's a good idea, because I guarantee you the stories we don't get to hear are from those who have encountered things and never made it back. Good night. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And don't forget to send us your scary stories today at darknessprevails.org/submit. Thanks.